I would make sure that every time I get a chance to work with a SA that's, got 25 years experience on me, and I know for a fact it's not even really worth their time to be talking to me, let alone working with me as my partner going out on a deal. But when they're willing to do so, and you're willing to just make it your mission to set them up and do everything you can, they'll see that and then take you under their wing and really show you the ropes. And then they'll want to close a deal for you and work just as hard for you because they understand, hey, this guy's green, but he's special. And I might have 25 years of being an SC. I'm principal SC at the original Aruba, and working with a guy like Gary Jenkins, who just I was a few years older than his kids, and he said, "You know what? Screw it. I'll work with this guy. I'll take him under my wing. I see he's working hard enough." And he got me to where I am today. So maintaining that connection, relationship with SAs, like my favorite one I met at Optus, and why I well they stayed in touch with you, buddy. But there's the SA relationship, especially for a new rep. It's just so powerful to really find someone who's willing to help you if you're willing to work hard for them because they're the backbone of the operation. You can do all you can, get a CISO, CIO, CEO's attention. Then what are you going to do? You're going to have to rely on someone. And if you've built a good, strong rapport, they're going to come in there and do their best for you and map the solution to their needs. But they'll also help you understand, hey, that's not the right persona to even go after for a product, or that's not the right situation. And so they can prevent you from making yourself look dumb by trying to sell someone something that doesn't align with their needs because you're inexperienced, but their experience will still help you. And I've just been tremendously lucky to learn that kind of right out of the gates because of the nature of my original startup company. Yeah, I thought it was a great relationship perspective to have. And for me, maintaining those relationships, I'm now employed because of my reference of Gary Jenkins
Yeah.
and Adrian Kuma, the CEO of that company that we, obviously sold to VMware, who's now owned by Broadcom. But they'll making those relationships as a young rep just entering a field and finding someone who's willing to help. If you ever get that opportunity, thank them, text them on their birthday, send them cards. Yeah, 7 years later, they'll still call in and say, "Yeah, Friday evening, I don't care. I'm now the principal or cloud
Yeah.
architect. I'll
Yeah.
shout Gary again, but I'll hop on and immediately talk to them if they're looking at hiring you. But I'm going to be honest and say Netscope should hire you."
Yeah. There we go. And that's the human face there, right? So I really want the IT teams to kind of understand what's on the other side. When IT side needs some new technology, I need to buy a product, I need to buy something from SaaS, I need to hire resources or get services. They go out to this big, huge marketplace and deal with managed service providers, consultants, integrators, resellers. There's a lot out there. And sometimes they'll get frustrated with the selling process. So I think it's good for IT to kind of hear the perspective on the other side. There are people on the other side. So when you feel like someone is badgering you, quote unquote, or maybe it's a junior salesperson, hey, send me a senior salesperson. I'll need that gravitas. So I think it's good to have this perspective from the other side and what's going on.
I totally understand that perspective, and I think there's a general reluctancy that IT leaders and IT in general have to talk with any type of sales rep because the normal thing that you will see is someone's going to try and push their product because they finally got your attention. They're not going to try and understand your need. And unless you actually can just transparently say, I want to have a conversation to see if we can align, you're not going to be able to get that face respect. But if you can quickly pitch and say what you do, most security professionals or IT professionals, anyone's going to be able to say, that's something that res- resonates with me, or I'm really not interested. You can take me off your list, but just that quick transparency to a low level rep even could help them know, okay, I'm targeting the wrong audience, or maybe sharpen their skills if they knew it was the right audience, and just go back to that. But yeah, I totally agree. It would be cool for IT to also understand that at the end of the day, salespeople do want to solve problems. Like we walk away smiling whenever we genuinely just got to help an organization with something they were struggling with to the point where they were willing to give us money for it. And now they're loving it. You're seeing buy-in, and all these people start to smile and use it and be like, it's going to make our lives easier. We're solving something. And that's the like intake way that you really get the gratification from, I think, business to business, especially SaaS enterprise level sales, is that change of an organization's perspective. It all starts with that entry level, and you got to make sure that timing's everything. Don't call someone at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Don't overcall someone. If they ask you not to call them until a certain time or to email them, listen. Obviously, but yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective to share for IT professionals who wonder, why don't these guys get it? Why don't they stop calling me? Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, but just because you connect with me and I accept it and you now send me a note, that's just a bothering down my inbox and not why I use LinkedIn. Well, the reason I use LinkedIn is actually to see CISOs give advice. I'm so annoyed by reps who are doing this. See things like that, and I'm like, great, now I know what not to do. But yeah, there's two sides to every story, and then there's the truth. It's
Yeah.
hard to, from the vendor or the partner or the perspective of the sales who wants to solve a problem and do it with value. Um, you got to start with understanding the value. But if IT is more transparent with sales from the start, here's what we want
Yeah.
to address, or here's what we don't want to address, or here's what we know about your company and why we're not even wanting to have a conversation, or here's why what your company does doesn't match with our roadmap for the next year to 2 to 3 years, and there's no reason for us to have a discussion. I mean, that will turn off a BDR like that. They'll be like, well,
Yeah. I tried. Yeah. Yeah. I made an attempt. And you don't know until you make an attempt. So long you're respectful of the answer and the feedback. But by the way, remember this BDR salesperson or SA moves around. So in 3 years, they could be working at another company that might have a solution that is useful. Can maybe the timing lines up correctly. The solution matches the problem. So that's one of the powerful things about LinkedIn and the network effect. You never know who you're going to need and when you're going to need it. So we can come to like a common framework for discussing. Do you have a problem? Are you ready to listen potentially? How much time are you willing to give me right now? Okay, I got 5 minutes. I'm at a networking event. Here's my general challenges. Don't have any money, but you know what? In 6 months, I might want to learn more. So I'll connect with you on LinkedIn. I'll reach back out to you, but I'm going to get busy. So I give you permission in 6 months just to quickly ping me. So I think if we just set these kind of ground rules early on, because nobody wants to be in the field like pestering, right? We want
well,
to, yeah,
William, if someone said that to me, I would count down the seconds to the day, but I would not bother them until then. I'd just be like, hey, is it still okay to have a 5 minute discussion like we talked about at that happy hour or at that conference? But I that would shut me or any BDR or any person in sales up, because you just gave us a true, honest answer. And if they don't respect that and they continue to follow up, well, that should tell you something about the type of rep you're about to have working with you. But if they listen and say, okay, you gave me some parameters, I'll follow up with you on 6 months and connect via LinkedIn, shoot your message. I see on LinkedIn that you not seen that. I'll shoot you an email saying, hey, we had met at this event. And, if you still want to speak for 5 minutes, I'd love to, see if that's still part of the long-term vision that you had mentioned back then, but remembering why you were going to reach out to someone and having that intent, um, but just doesn't have to happen today. It can happen in a year. It could be a next year agenda, but I mean, yeah, just a quick 5 minute. No, I'm not interested, but I could be in a little while. So if you follow up with me then, respecting that, you got to respect what the customer says and listen to them because it's what they need. Especially in a world where people are pressured by sales leadership
Yeah.
and hitting revenue goals and saying, well, what else can you pull in? And hard to look at your boss and go, nothing, because I don't want to, look at my leadership and say, I can't, bring you anything more. That's not the answer I want to give. But I also, that would mean I'd have to potentially sacrifice some of the expectations I had given or set with my clients if I will reach back out to you now. And I don't do the position of, well, it's getting close to the end of the quarter, end of the month. I know this is supposed to happen in 6 months. Let me see if I can create some stupid discount to get them to
Yeah.
do it now because they've already given you their circumstances. They've already told you their budget. They've already told you what they have to offer. When they may be having an appetite for this, you're just going to cause distraction in what they're trying to do and accomplish at their end of the month and quarter as well, which they have to, make sure their objectives from the board that they committed to do by the end of this quarter are done. And so that's where there's also sales has to understand, listen to your clients and your customers because if you do, you'll be remembered as at least the one who did that. And so if they leave, you leave 3 years
Yeah.
later down the road, to
Yes.
circle back to your point, hey, they're now working in an industry we do really well. We're connected. Let me see if they've ever talked with my company before, and if they have or haven't, we can go from there. But they'll at least remember that basic respect and probably be open to talking with you at that time. See if the align if there's uh, aligned needs then. But building that network and being respectful of people, understanding that especially as a rep, you're the dumbest person in the room at all times, especially in tech sales. You just listen and make sure that you are bringing solutions and answering the actual needs at the time that it is needed.
Well, we got some good news here because people would just heard us say 6 months and think, oh gosh, I mean, we're locked out of this prospect, this entire company. If you look at went online, found out this is a $3 billion company, they do all this spend, and the salesperson went back to their boss and say, I got to wait 6 months. And your boss looking at, man, this is a $3 billion company. They got to have opportunities, and it potentially could be. So at the time you spoke with this person, they said, give me 6 months. There was certain things going on in the environment, but they could make an acquisition next month. They could have a breach in 3 months. They could have something that comes from the GRC team in 6 weeks. The requirements and dynamics of an IT environment and business are changing all the time. So, Nick, like if you have a marketing department that running a special webinar with some thought leaders, and they come back and say, "Hey, Nick, I just found out that the guy that you were talking to 3 weeks ago just went to our link and watched our webinar." You're thinking that's interesting. He told me 6 months, but he had interest, and I know in the marketing world they like to call it the intent data. That's very, very interesting that this person went and clicked the link. And by the way, Nick, it turns out somebody in the GRC team with the same email domain as your prospect also did research on our website for something that we recorded before about a compliance issue that we can solve. That's also interesting. So when you see these other information coming in, Nick, and you're thinking, maybe you don't have to wait 6 months. Maybe I can do something before 6 months because this company is saying we have some type of problem that's unresolved. Maybe we need to address it early. So let's talk about that and how you take that information in.
I would take that and I wouldn't approach them with oh, it seems like you must. have a different timeline, it just seems like there may be more needs that I need to uncover and discover. And I would say, hey, I noticed that you were on that webinar. What did you think? Like, did you get any value out of it? Was it more because you're just trying to plan and get an idea of what it could look like 6 months from now, or are there other things you guys are looking to address currently that we might be able to solve? Maybe, I don't know, we do have a GRC offering, obviously, in this case scenario that you'd be mentioning. Like, does your GRC team know about us? And, like, maybe we could have a broader discussion to see, like, who all wants to come to the table, because if you guys do have a GRC team and they have the needs or projects going on, we could probably help them out as well. Which, even if you needed to wait, we could get the footprint in the door, and then whenever you come meet with your need in 6 months, the budget's approved, you're going to get a better deal because you're already a customer of ours. And so, if you could maybe even introduce me to the GRC team, I'd love to speak with them, or if you'd be willing to broker a call with them and your team as well. Based on This is going to be based on context he's told me
Yeah.
that he learned or liked in the webinar. And, and so then I'll use that, and that's the messaging I'm going to do. Because if you're not audibly listening and audibly ready to change, to pivot, oh, wow, I just learned there's a deal early. I had set parameters, but I can still approach it in a non-sales way. Like, I'm not going to come at you saying, oh, I think now you might want to buy something, or you're ready to purchase something. And now I'm going to come at you and say, hey, what do you think of the webinar? I hope you liked it. Did you get anything valuable from it? And then
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
start to expand.
Yeah, 'cause that's the key point, right? Because you don't randomly go to a webinar and sit there and watch it for no reason, right? So we got to remember, just 'cause you hear no or not now from one person, these organizations are quite large. And until that problem or itch or challenge is solved, right? And by the way, when we say solved, that doesn't mean they picked a vendor and a partner and they financed it. If it's going to take you 8 months to implement it and to get it all the way through into a company fully operationalized where the company gets value, that's a long period of time. So 6 months, you may need to start in January, so to come back by December to tell a business, we are gaining value for this investments. So I always tell people, don't take no as a hard no, but it could be 8, 9, 10, 12 different people inside this organization that's looking for something that your company might actually provide.
That's where, as you're also mentioning something like that, they're going to need to onboard suppliers, and they're going to have a security process that goes through and assesses in general the software. Is it valuable? Is it usable? Is it something that is going to provide potential business impact if it were to not work as intended, or have a breach through it, or really with any vendor at that point. But it's the sales cycle of 6 months. You maybe should do more discovery. Is that when you're going to start talking about this project, or is that your timeline for when you'd like a solution? Because if it's 6 months for when you'd like a solution, there's a lot of planning that needs to start to happen, and bringing people to the table. And for instance, the GRC team and everyone else that could be a stakeholder and find value from the solution that we're offering. But that vendor onboarding piece is just, man, it's going to take a little while, especially in the SaaS space where you're going to be part of their critical infrastructure in some way and likely connected into their network. Therefore, data regulations, sharing, international, anything like that, all these new great compliant frameworks that nobody loves, they're all going to have to be considered by the third party risk team, the security team. Someone's going to have to consider them. And that's where their sales cycles are going to start slowing down, and you got to get ahead of things fast.
And that's important too, because I know IT knows it, right? Most buyers, CIOs, CISOs, they kind of know it because they hear every vendor and partner say the same thing. We'll help you out. We'll do a lot of heavy lifting for you before we even potentially get to the features and benefits and demo and PLCs. And they really, really need to take advantages of that, I think, right? Because you're going to do a lot of legwork on your side, right? On the seller side to help with return on investments, requirements, due diligence. All these things have to be done. And if you have a human human connection somewhere in this organization, you can do a lot of things necessary to prep to get this technology inside this organization and actually operationalize it. So I think let's talk about this. Hey, Nick, I love you. We may not even buy from you, but we could really use some help. Maybe a couple of guys you have in the background, a couple of gals, thought leaders, people who've done this. And every time you hear the word, yeah, I'm gonna track this with Excel, or you hear somebody say, man, it's a lot of manual processes. Normally in the technology marketplaces, we have tooling and we made it easy, right? We're not gonna put stuff on prem. It's gonna be a SaaS offering. It's gonna make you easier for IT to consume it. There's a lot of opportunity for them to partner with Nick as opposed to Nick don't call me for 6 months. So let's talk about ways you see that you can help out in this early stages here.
Absolutely, because I want to be attached to them the whole time, whether or not I'm directly making money. If I'm showing that I genuinely care about their organization values and goals and helping them achieve those, whether or not it's directly tied to my pocketbook, when the project comes up that does include me, they will be extremely ready and open to working with me because I've helped them get to the point where they're now able to take on a different look. Like for me, where I'm doing something totally different with supply chain detection and response. That's something that a lot of people wouldn't even, they'd have to Google search it. They wouldn't know what that meant. Um, but it is directly tied back into security initiatives and breaches and what is causing people to wonder where are my threat actors coming from now. I feel like we've done such a great job, figured out internally. Our controls are pretty good. You know, every time we get our alerts in our SIM, they're monitored, they're triaged, they're remediated, and everything's good. But you can only see what you can see inside those four walls. We're talking about vendors here. What if your customer or client has 600 vendors that are all critical to their network? Think about how many softwares just the IT department uses. Now think about HR. Think about ServiceNow, Audit Board, the GRC tools that they may have in place. I mean, all those things are going to be business critical. And if your four walls are perfectly safe, you should, as a CISO or any security leader, feel like you're doing your job and doing it well, especially in the SOC. But then if you find out, like Target did, hey, someone's in our system and data's been being leaked for a while. How'd they get in? Oh, the HVAC. How do we not know? Well, it was in it was in our alert. I mean, it's just who would have thought the HVAC would cause us to get breached? And then everyone's looking like, wait, how did that happen? And you think of this concept of, wait a minute, whoever's connected to my infrastructure, whoever's not doing patching on a good cadence, whoever's providing vulnerable to a 0 day, whoever's basically not maintaining the status of that original questionnaire when they were compliant to whatever HIPAA, SOC, compliant framework you needed them to be. Sure, they could tell you they are, but do you trust them? And then you trust that they're patching and doing everything to stay in compliance? And do you trust all your hundreds and thousands potentially of critical vendors to be doing that? And that's where it becomes oh, wait, there's a whole another attack surface out there. And how do you measure or quantify something that's all owned by the people I buy things from? And that's, I think, going to be a very unique challenge. A lot of people start to solve is force their just release support. I read saying that 70% of critical breaches leading to financial loss are being caused by third party, aka supply chain breaches. And That's so long are the days of pure phishing attempts, I guess, because yeah, if your credentials are on the dark web, obviously that's something that it's going to get flagged. Someone's going to find that and hopefully tell you, hey, you've been breached. But the whole purpose is to prevent that from happening. And that's why you need to be able to understand your full attack surface. If you have a big white piece of paper and you drew a square anywhere on it, you can fill out that square black. You're safe. You're covered. What about all that additional white space? What are those vendors doing that could make that dark square vulnerable? Who do they work with that makes that paper even bigger? Because you have their vendors as well that could potentially be the entry point. Who are their vendors doing vendors with? And you can go down the line.
Yeah.
But whenever you have access to 4 million companies' security scores, and you're able to, without having to do any type of intrusive, and we get to completely own the data, show in real time, hey, this is based on 240 security factors and then into 10 scoring uh, factors, or I should say 240 signals that then would roll into like 10 factors. Here's how we create the score. It's very, very robust and technical how we make a score. But just a point in time score is going to give you a snapshot again, just like a questionnaire. It's all about understanding over time what's predictive and indicating that you're at risk of potentially getting breached by your third parties, and you may want to suggest to them to increase their patching cadence, or what if they get exposed to a 0 day and they don't subscribe to any lists or have anyone checking the CVE updates from the day? You can tell your critical vendor, hey, look, we need you to go do this. And at certain companies like ours, we're actually able to go out and do that on your behalf. And so that's where I think the shift in market will go as risk and threat actors. When I always think to myself of what would I do
Yeah.
if I were them? I'm like, huh, I would go for the big fish. The big fish are going to have the best in class security tools, top right of Gartner's quadrant. So how do I break those? Well, probably by going in a different route, not the internal surface, but getting in through their external surface, which is their third parties, and that's what I think is really exciting. Also scary, because when you think of critical infrastructure, energy, the implication it could have on not just a business's ability to make revenue, but human life, and it's a very exciting thing to be a part of and evangelize. Is it something that most people would have to Google?
We do.
It's
Yeah.
like supply chain detection response. I know that we have extended detection response. We have a SOC. We have managed detection response, monitoring detection response. SCDO. What? No, no, that's not one of that's not one of the detection responses. Well, it is now, and that's what I think is pretty cool. Is that it's an
Yeah.
extension of a SOC that, because we have integrations with, and we're also
And I
covered
think
by it.
Nick. So Nick, I think we need to back up there. You said some key critical issues here, right? So we could take the CISO, the CIO out of the picture, and I can sit you next to the CEO based off a couple of keywords you talked about. You talk about impact from cyber breaches. We talked about critical suppliers, right? So these are business decisions about suppliers that we have contractual relationship with to run our business, and we have to keep track of it. Now, traditionally, that's the old traditional vendor management, right? Somebody off in the corner doing this, the vendor machines, the paper supplies, and then they rope in the CIO who gets some of the technology components they track. Maybe CISO's tracking some things. Maybe some other business units are tracking other things. So we can have 5, 6, 7 different systems of people outside our organization across vendor management. And a lot of people talk about supply chain, right? What's the supply chain of external entities that we need to run our business? So we start talking about, hey, who we're talking to about a potential solution. If you're sitting next to a CEO and say, man, this is a lot. Some people got 500 different vendors to run their businesses. And then you say the CISO, like, well, I'm not worried about the HVAC people. I don't track HVAC. Well, we mentioned Target before, right? HVAC. That wouldn't be, if you're thinking about modeling threats that could lead to a breach, people like HVAC, I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about technical components. No, this is a business decision that we're managing risk across the board. And if you find and hear about friction on tracking and identifying all these vendors, that's a business level potential problem there. So I think that's important. Now, can we get to the whole discussion of some of the technical components of a solution? Or people say, man, Nick, that's too expensive. And I think that gets back to, if you're only talking to technical people with technical budgets, that might not be capturing the actual business problem. So your solution for the company you're working with could have a solution that could really help and help today. So let's talk
And
about that. Yeah.
I can, if I was doing a demo, I'd just pull up an ROI calculator because we have it. It's available. You can use it on our website. All you would do is put in the amount of critical vendors you have to your business, um, choose the level of service that you'd like, and then based on other factors like do you have to comply with certain regulations per 24 hours of how much could you potentially lose, several different factors. It'll tell you exactly what your ROI would be if you were using the platform. And then what will also, if you want to go deeper with Forrester, if you want to read that 30-page report on our website, they set up a mock Fortune 500 company and showed over 3 years of owning our platform that the return on investment just in time saved from vendor onboarding and potential breach is over $4 million. And so when a solution costs a fraction of what it's showing you and proving that it's saving you, because once again, you need to run your business, can't risk not having it you can't risk not having a critical vendor when their business impact is going to take you down, at least for the time being. And so preventing that is fractions on a dollar. And so we are able to actually, we just came out with an ROI calculator because our customers were wanting to know how do I how do I show my CFO that, look, no, this isn't just a security tool. This is actually, and then all of a sudden the CFO is like, wait a minute, can I look more at this because I want to see more about how we can save some money potentially. Can we get maybe more off like offloaded over here? And that's where the conversation becomes extremely fun because the CEO, the CFO get the ROI of it. The C-suite, they don't have to fight for budget because right there we can show them during a trial, a max customer, like, hey, this is what the ROI they're literally making today. And it's, you can do it based on how much you save today, how much you save over a month, how much you'll save over your first year. But the immediate ROI impact is really what drives the buy-in for the budget and creates the need for, no one wants to go ask their boss for money, but when you can show them, hey, if you like, this is going to save us money, but it's really also going to help us prevent ourselves from being one of the companies who's got to go tell all of our customers within 4 days that we got breached. You
Well,
don't want to
yeah,
be on that side of the
yeah.
house ever. So rather than being there, we can make an investment that will actually pay us back over time, millions of dollars, depending on the amount of vendors you have, millions of dollars per year, depending on the amount of vendors you have, and for a fraction of the cost of that. And so it's a very easy way to create budget, especially when you have cycles being spent on vendor risk management. And I mean, if you have a high level security or anyone with security engineering skills, vetting a vendor when they could be solving your real issues internally, that's not the best use of their time either. And so there's so much ROI to be built in, and that's not even part of what's factored that's in the calculator. But I think ROI is a huge piece of any investment, unless it's a must. have like a firewall to protect you from the internet.
Well, we got a couple of things here I want to zero in. So most business people don't hear this full story, right? So you could have your vendor management team with say maybe they have two people full head count, and that's all they do all day: get questionnaires, do evaluations, and their manager has a constraint and say, you know what, I need two more people at a minimum to keep this pace up because a lot of processes is Power BI, it's Excel, a lot of calling, and then that's that group there. And you can have another team that say, I just need to do we hear a lot about risk quantification, right? We need to do these scenarios where we may have a problem in our supply chain. I need to do some analysis. But if they're doing that analysis and don't know about two or three key vendors because it's not on their spreadsheet, that could be another problem. So you could have multiple problems and challenges spread through the organization where, oh my, somebody's trying to get some head count, someone's doing incomplete analysis because they don't have all the information as simple as, do we contractually have this key two vendors? But we have no visibility. We don't see that on the other side of the organization. So we're getting to a point now, Nick, is where if I gave you an ideal world 20 minutes with CEO, CTO, CO, CFO, just to get to the point where you say, we have a business problem here and ask, is there anything available? Remember, this could be the same organization where you talk to a technical person who said, call back in 6 months. Between our conversation in the last 15 minutes, we identified a business problem that goes all the way to the C suite, where you need to start working on vetting solutions, approaches, pricing to see if we can operationalize this. If you say, hey, it's a great solution, but it's not to next year budget, that only flies on the lower levels where it's the technical people like, we'll get to it next year. Like, could you imagine the CFO like, you getting into a win? How much is
Yeah,
it?
exactly. He's like, I could have saved $500,000 last year, and you're asking for me to budget now for it. The answer to the budget question is yes, but I might need to open a head count for someone who knows when it's time to bring me something like this immediately, because it is a much higher business level, C level, board level decision and fear to have is like the unknown risk that you cannot manage what you cannot measure. You cannot measure what you can't see or quantify. So without a platform like ours, and also to another point you made, spot and time versus continuous ongoing monitoring, sure, they can say we get to do business with this great brand. We're going to shore up everything and then send them back that security questionnaire. Boom, we passed. That was a snapshot in time. And they were honest. But now all of a sudden, have you as a customer, they focus on other things. Things aren't being updated as
Yeah.
frequently. That questionnaire is just a snapshot of time. It doesn't let you know what they're doing. And so, are you going to have them fill that out every year? Are you going to have them do it every 6 months because they're that critical to your business? Who's going to take the time to do that? Because that's something that should be automated and not, you know, a paid employee doing that because the value of using software opposed to a headcount that could be for, allocated to do other things that aren't automated and need manual processes. That's why I think the true value would come in from a time savings and saying, look, we don't really need the new headcount if we have this tool. We could actually just have them run the whole life cycle management if we let them continuously monitor. And to your other point of who's even in our network, we can do an automated vendor detection to let you know, hey, I guess you, like, especially with like mergers, acquisitions, global companies who have offices in several different countries, like they might be using different vendors for different things. And so understanding that as well is important, especially for a board of a multinational um, company at that point. But then
Yeah.
even down to a small team with one third party risk management person and maybe just us 3 or 4 people that manage
Yeah.
third party risk and it's outside of security purview. The CISO is not going to own it. It's going to be owned by someone else. Well,
Oh.
the impact of the implications of how that third party risk team is doing and that vendor risk management is doing is going to directly affect that
Yeah.
CISO. And that CISO and CIO also are going to want to understand the ROI potential that they can save. That's why, because when they take that to their CFO, they're like, that, I mean, they just did their colleague a huge favor, a huge help, and said, look, we found something that finally helps us and it saves you money.
So Nick, so when you get shot down very quickly by a potential prospect, but from the conversation you just realize, man, I'm hearing these challenges. I know they got the problem, and they say, you know what? Maybe delay it. Maybe not now. Maybe they go to a competitor, and then a year later, after going to a competitor, you talk to them, and they still have the problem, and you're thinking, whoa! So did the competitor not solve it? Or what's going on? From your side, how do you deal with that? Because your team, your company has researched a problem out in the field, invested this money and time, built this business model, have a solution, and you do as much as you can to make it easy to consume it. And you're talking to people, and you're like, either they're not giving you the time to do it, or they went to a competitor, but you keep looking like, but he didn't solve the problem. Now, what are your thoughts with that?
That FUD, fear of the we all know the term FUD. That basically, I would think my competitor went in there and asked some questions that caused them to doubt my offering. Um, and while the it ultimately caused me to lose the deal, it it was the fear that caused the client to go with them. It wasn't the technical value that causes the client to go with them. So I think, understanding early on what their technical requirements are, what the desired outcomes are, what metrics they're going to use to measure the outcomes, and if they are being delivered is extremely important to know before you get into any type of trial, any type of bake off, any type of competitive conversation. And also, I would ask, well, did they tell you that they were going to solve the problem for you that you still have today?
That's a good.
But
By the
that
way,
would probably be my
yeah,
original question
yeah, a
before
very
I
good
jumped
question.
into,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't jump into all the scenarios. I'd say, well, did they tell you they're going to solve it? Because if no, then I don't need to dive into that. But if they did, expand upon that for me. Tell me like what parts they didn't that they said they would. I'd love to
Even good
know.
point. Yeah, I think it's almost opportunity for you guys, right, in the seller market, right? So as opposed to saying, hey, technology could be coming very close to a lot of other people, but we do solve business problems and we can show it with just the references. It wasn't our webinar, it wasn't our website, it wasn't the discounting. We heard your problem. And after somebody been using our solution for 6 months, 9 months, a year, we went and asked them, is this solving business problems? Is it speeding up processes? Is it offloading tasks from your employees? Is it increasing visibility? And if you get that feedback from existing customers and can put them in front of prospects, that seems to be the most powerful way to say, we are actually solving what the CEO, FO, CEO, I've heard these, I wrote it down, repeated it to you, and we have proof because a lot of companies say we've been around for a long time, we're fantastic, but your current customers should be able to validate that very quickly by they're using it, and we say it's going to do these three different things. Our ROI stands up. And then we can you can get to the whole thing. Well, their technology is a little bit faster or quicker, or they're 5% more expensive, and the business doesn't care about that, right? It's like here are the business problems I presented, and Nick and your team, right? Because you're front ending your team, right? The researchers, the developers, sales, marketing, and they're going to remember this guy named Nick, who I met at that networking event, and I told him 6 months. But then he saw some signals and he messaged me in a way that made it comfortable for me to talk to him before 6 months. And I introduced him to some other people in my organization. And then 9 months later, Nick put in front of us something that was very compelling. And then 2 years from now, they'll say, we're still using the solution. They're still keeping up. And all they're going to remember, not the company name, they're going to remember the name Nick. And I think, Nick, that's what you're in position to do for IT leaders who help them really looking to help their businesses solve business problems. So I think you're in a good spot there. Um, and I think I'll just say, yeah,
Say at the end of the day, I don't want to be remembered as a great salesperson, but I want to be remembered as a great person to work with that people really enjoy working with. So I hope that is the truth, what you said, that, ultimately at the end of the day, I get to help change leaders' perspectives and do it that way.
and that's not no better praise. He helped me solve an itch I had, and he delivered. So I
And
think that,
I mean, if it's, I, that's why I then go back to, hey, remember who was involved? My essay. He, get here in front with me, buddy. Like, there's, yeah, I might get credit as the director, but there might have been a BDR involved. There was a delivery team involved. There was a full team involved. And that's where any smart rep would know also you can't do the job without your full team. And that's where the wins are also even more fun because you get to celebrate as a team. But I don't even want to answer that question as if I didn't do it with my essay tied next to me because they're integral to every deal that you will ever work as a high level sales rep.
awful, Nick. But keep going out there, man, and finding and listening to problems and presenting people with the opportunity to, hey, go fix that challenge or problem. I think you're going to do very well in this career.
I hope so, and I hope that one day I'm lucky enough to cross paths and work with you at the same company at the same time again. But until then, um, I will continue to be the biggest fan of the Smart IT podcast there is. That's for dang sure.
Fantastic, Dick. Hey, I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely, William. Is there any other things you'd like to discuss or talk about, or maybe
Oh
you
yeah,
want
we
to get
got.
off your chest before I?
Uh, yeah, we're just scratching the surface. We got so many interesting angles and other topics we can go into. But this is a good stopping point for this session. So it's real good value and giving IT and their teams kind of a little inside view from the other side of the selling,
Yeah,
what goes on behind and what they're going through when they try to bring these solutions to market.
and we just want to help you. And so if you tell us we can't, and we'll go away. But if you tell us we can, we will. We just want to know how we can help. That's what sellers want to do. I mean, yeah, they have quotas and pressures from bosses, but it's not what's in their goals. They want to solve a problem, and they know that's the way to ultimately capture business if they're smart enough to be working with you.
Awesome. Great word, great insight and words to wrap up, Nick. I appreciate your time, man. And that's been another session with Smart IT Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right.